Fallout Equestria the Chrysalis, Chapter 23, Part 5. I lurched and dove, my magic digging inside the pouch strapped across my chest as I sped towards the top of the turret. My eyes glanced down to the EFS compass. The red mark was centered right on the tank. That raider was inside, slowly traversing the giant cannon towards my friends. I had to stop him. I didn't know much of anything about the inside of a tank. I didn't know where the gunner would sit, though I guess somewhere in the turret, and my EFS could help narrow it down. I didn't know what I might find if I tried to get in there to fight him, but I did know one thing. The inside of a tank is a small, enclosed space. Grenades love small, enclosed spaces. I levitated the grenade from my pouch as I swooped by the turret, pulling its pin and slapping the explosive in through one of the open hatches. Then I swooped up, getting distance as I banked around to watch and evaluate the effectiveness of my attack. The muffled bang sounded almost like a huge metal drum, deep and hollow and oddly unsatisfying. It was followed a moment later by a quieter thump, and then the vehicle erupted. Plumes of flame poured from every opening, roaring like rockets. I banked sharply away, dazzled again by the brightness that lit the compound and the surrounding area. The plumes of flame rapidly dwindled, and moments later had died out, leaving only a few bits of flame flickering inside the burned-out hulk. The violence of the conflagration had knocked the turret askew. The red mark had vanished from my compass. I swung around in a circle, searching, but the only remaining red mark was the one in Sickle's hooves.
"That's the last one!"
I called out. Boomer was snarling and growling furiously, her voice still amplified by her armor's speakers. She even tried firing her grenade launcher. The thump of them firing was almost drowned out by the metallic clunk of the weapons cycling. The first 3 rounds sailed harmlessly out of the compound. Then Sickle attacked the weapon itself, striking it with her blades and spiked hooves. It fell silent, inoperable. I glided down and landed next to Sickle. Despite the power armor's strength and durability, Sickle had done some horrible damage to it. Several pieces were completely torn off, and one of the 4 legs seemed locked in place, unmoving. It was an incredibly crude piece of technology. Maybe it had once been Steel Ranger armor, patched time and time again until it was more scrap metal than original armor. Or maybe it was something some pony had cobbled together after the war. In either case, it looked to be an amalgamation of all manner of scrap metal, welded haphazardly together over a heavy robotic frame. The grenade launcher was simply bolted to the side, and several compartments were built into the armor. Jagged spikes of metal protruded from the armor, and likely would have posed a significant problem for any pony less armored than Sickle. What could the average caravan or isolated farmer hope to do against such a terrifying machine of war? A loud shriek of metal made my ears pin flat against my skull as Sickle peeled back a section of armor along Boomer's back, then laughed.
"Oh, I got you, you little bitch! Time to come out and play!"
Boomer continued to scream obscenities and struggle ineffectively as Sickle pulled and pried at her armor. Metal squealed, followed by several loud cracks and pings as parts broke. Finally, the damaged armor gave one final screech as Sickle tore away the back, leaving a squirming pale blue body exposed. Sickle reached in. The loudspeakers abruptly cut off as she pulled the kicking and screaming raider from the armor. Then she lifted her up and slammed her down onto the roof. The difference was stark and shocking. Boomer couldn't have been any bigger than Starlight and just as lean. Her coat was ragged and worn, and looked as if it were slightly too small for her, so that her joints protruded sharply. Sickle pinned her down, limbing over her and laughing.
"You're just a little run, ain't ya? So cute and tiny."
Boomer responded to the mocking by kicking Sickle in her armored gut. Sickle naturally laughed off the feeble blow.
"Oh, you wanna play rough, huh?"
Her demeanor changed in an instant. A hoof came down on Boomer's head, roughly pinning it to the roof. While Boomer grunted in pain, Sickle lowered her head, pressing her blood and gore-stained muzzle into the smaller mare's face. All hints of amusement were gone.
"Why the fuck were you gunning for them, are you flimsy little runt?"
Despite her situation and the grimace of pain, Boomer grinned.
"Aw, did we kill your mare friend, you obese mother— Ah!"
Sickle had pressed down, twisting her hoof a little. Blood started to trickle down Boomer's face where the spikes had dug in. I cringed, more than a little uncomfortable where this was going, and stepped in.
"Sickle, stop."
She did stop, though she raised her head to glare at me.
"Why should I?"
She asked, her teeth bared in a snarl. A short time ago, that would have been enough to send me scurrying away. For whatever reason, I felt much more comfortable with it now.
"Torture and the threat of torture or death is an extremely unreliable method of extracting information. Ponies say anything to get out of it, and we'd have to waste time verifying your answers. I should know. Getting information from ponies who don't want to give it is my specialty."
I raised a hoof, gesturing to Boomer.
"Let me try."
Sickle's head tilted slightly as she considered it. Beneath her, Boomer was looking at me with a grin.
"Wow, that is one fucked up face you got! Shut the fuck up!"
After a moment, she relaxed and flashed me a grin.
Sure, let's see this. But once you're done, this little bitch is mine.
She sat back, keeping Boomer pinned down with one hoof, while her attention turned to the torn-up power armor. I nodded, stepping up close to lie down face-to-face with Boomer. She tried to spit on me, but couldn't get the distance from her position. I frowned at her.
You seem to have developed a very abrupt interest in emeralds, haven't you? Was that her name?
Boomer replied, her mouth splitting in a cruel grin.
Hey, I don't see any green ponies here. Did she not make it?
Sickle growled and looked back, but I lifted a hoof, and the growl quieted to a mere grumble. Boomer laughed, cold and condescending.
I never thought that big, scary Sickle every pony's always pissing themselves over would be some deformed runt's little bitch. Yeah, keep talking, you mouthy little cunt.
Sickle growled without looking back, while she pulled a surprising variety of explosives from the armor's compartments.
That's gonna end well for you. You haven't had any interaction with Emerald before,
I said, dragging the conversation back on topic.
You've never seen her, you only vaguely knew about her, and you have no personal reason to specifically target her. Someone hired you to kill her, didn't they?
She sneered back at me.
I don't know what you're talking about. It was a rhetorical question.
I said flatly.
I already know the answer.
She gave another condescending laugh, something I suspected was a defense mechanism in the face of her near-certain death.
Yeah? Well, you can suck my rhetorical dick, you bug-faced bitch! You shouldn't use words that you don't understand.
I chided.
I know the idea to kill her came from outside of your charming little following. I just want to know who.
The smug sneer returned.
I still don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do?
I said.
But let me ask you another question. Was it worth it? You've lost everything that you'd ever worked for. You lost your gang. You lost your home. You're not gonna live to see the dawn.
I considered how to put the next part in appropriate raiderese.
The individual who hired you for this fucked you. She's the reason that you've lost everything. Chances are she was hoping that it'd end like this. It's tidier that way. Except you see, she fucked us too.
I leaned in a little closer. Boomer had gone silent, though her lips curled back to bare her teeth at my approach.
So, you and I have exactly one thing in common. We both want to get back at the pony who fucked us. I'm willing to make you a deal. You give us her name, and we'll make sure that she pays for what she's taken from us.
Boomer went silent, her grin having vanished. She glared back at me, eye to eye, and held there for several long seconds. Then her sneer returned.
Sorry, Bugface. Never did get a name.
I nodded, standing and glanced toward Sickle.
So, they were hired.
Sickle rumbled and nodded. Figures.
Yeah, and both of you fuckers can go suck a grenade!
I started to turn away, but stopped halfway as I remembered a question Starlight had asked earlier.
You know Banger?
She spit again.
What about him?
I'm thankful it was dark, even with the pip-buck screen turned way up. It likely hid the hints of surprise I showed. I hadn't expected any connection. I quickly switched gears, my mind racing to pick out the correct course of lies to get the information I wanted.
He's caught up in this too,
I said, looking down at her.
If you don't know who she is, he will. She's fucked him over too, but now we can't find him. The entire mercenary band that he was in, wiped out. But he's not among the dead. We need to talk to him. Where would we find him?
Boomer had gone quiet, the wall of defiance vanishing for a moment.
Fuck if I know!
I watched her for a second, before reluctantly accepting that it was possibly true.
Pity. You done then?
Sickle said, a bit too eagerly for my tastes.
Yes, she's all yours.
I said, feeling a little dirty as I said it.
Just make it quick. No torture.
While Boomer cursed and kicked, Sickle simply grinned.
Yeah, I'm not exactly the slow torture kind of mare.
She lifted a foreleg, then sank her leg-mounted blades into the roof beside Boomer.
Gonna make this plenty gruesome, though. You wanna watch?
I sighed, turning away. I could see the glow of Starlight's pip-buck as she headed our way, leading Dusty to the wall connecting the two buildings. Sickle chuckled behind me, then spoke.
I only got one question for you, String Bean. That farm that your gang hit a few days ago with the pair of ponies and their two foals, did you actually get in on that, or were you hiding back here like a little chicken shit? Yeah, I was there.
Boomer spat back.
Should have seen those little fucks crying when we killed their kids. A friend of yours?
She laughed. That laugh was cut off by a scream of pain and profanity. I winced, but the cry quickly diminished to the labored, whining breathing of a wounded pony. Most notably, a very not dead pony. Dusty shouted out from the opposite roof. What's going on over there? I looked back. Sickle was opening one of the containers strapped to her side. Her helm's muzzle hung to the side and fresh blood was dribbling from her chin. Boomer had her forehooves pressed to the side of her head, and in the monochrome lighting I could see the wetness of blood splattered across her face.
Sickle, what are you doing?
She paused, looking up at me, and then split the bloody ear into the open container.
What? This thing's worth 50 caps.
I blinked.
You could have taken it after she was dead.
She paused, her head tilting as she considered what I said.
Guess so.
She finally said with a shrug, and turned back to Boomer.
Too bad. I could have had a lot of fun with you scrawny little rat. Let's get this over with.
I looked away again, waiting for it to be done with. The anger that had burned in the back of my mind had burnt out. The adrenaline had faded, and in its absence, I felt so tired. I'd seen enough ponies die for one day. Boomer's pained whines grew to a flurry of cusses and grunts, accompanied by the sound of a struggle as her hooves scraped and banged uselessly against Sickle's armor. Her voice rose abruptly to shrill pain screams, furious and panicked. I felt like something was withering inside of me, especially as the screams of pain turned to struggles once more. Sickle was chuckling. My ears flattened in irritation at that, and I turned back to shout.
Sickle!
I had just turned back when Sickle swung around, hurtling Boomer out over the courtyard, spinning and cursing. Boomer exploded. I staggered and fell over out of pure shock at the unexpected detonation. I scrambled back to my hooves and rushed over to the edge of the roof. Boomer's remains lay on the ground below, her belly completely blown out. Everything to the rear of her chest was torn and mangled. A severed hind leg lay several yards away, and the other looked to be attached only by a small section of skin. "What the fuck was that?" Dusty shouted. He and Starlight were picking themselves up on the walkway behind the front tower. Sickle was still chuckling with satisfaction as I turned towards her.
What the hell did you just do?
Her chuckle stopped as she looked at me.
To what? That scrawny little cunt killed Emerald. You really gonna complain about this? I know that, but...
I looked down at the mangled corpse. Then I looked back to the collection of explosives Sickle had pulled from the power armor.
But this? How about those fools then?
Sickle said.
You know why that colt was missing its head? It's because they stuck a grenade in his mouth and pulled the pin.
She stepped in, pressing her face close to mine as she gave a savage, bloody grin.
Now guess where they stuck it in the little filly?
I drew back, horrified. Sickle's grin grew a little wider.
Yeah.
She gave another dark chuckle as she walked past me.
I love me some good fucking irony.
As gruesome as Sickle may be, you just gotta love her. And think about it, justice is being served. Not the most ethical way, but it's still there. Anyways, let's get on to our ethical donators. Top donators are 630, J10Man, Darkside, Only One Thing, and Ceru Orion. Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin Rolan, Stu Hex, Sword Brother and Mordred, Omicron Lyrae, Will, Chris, Twinkie, Hadzaza, Riot Soul, Iron Sky, Badass Waffle, Shadow Moon, Luigi88, and many more explosive people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.